Dave Burkett of the Free Press is here with us. Lions start the season 0-4. Dan Campbell tells us today the start stings, but he believes they're not that close. This isn't a playoff team, Dave, but have you seen signs from this team to believe and kind of echo what he says, or are they pretty far away?
Well, I think they need a whole lot of a big influx of talent for them to be, close. Quarterback, receiver, secondary. There's a lot of spots where they're lacking right now. But I do think the foundation for the program is in place, and I think Brad and Dan both have done a good job of building some of that. I mean, they have some of the right people in place. I like the way they're going about business and trying to develop the young guys, and so I don't think it's a stretch to say that you can see something positive happening in the future here.
I think going into this year, right, we knew this was likely going to be a scenario. This wasn't a playoff team. The struggle was going to be there, but if you could at least have the respect of the room that wasn't here in that last regime, you could take those steps. We've seen it. What's been most promising to you as you've looked at some of the young guys that they keep hoping that can take that step this year?
Well, look, I mean, even though Penei Sewell didn't have his best game last week against the Chicago Bears, I think he's been a real big positive. I mean, the way that he's played at left tackle, you can look at him and say, he is the left tackle of the future for this team. And on an offensive line that already has Taylor Decker, that already has Frank Ragnow, even though those guys are injured, that's a really important building block to have, because at some point you're going to have a young quarterback and you're going to have to protect them. And the way that they want to win here, I think that's a really important thing. And not just him either. Some of the other young guys, Derek Barnes hasn't played a ton. Looks like he can be a pretty good player in time. Aleem McNeil's coming off his best game. So some of those young guys that they hope will be cornerstones for them, you really do see the spark that maybe they will be that guy.
Before the season, I asked you, what jersey are we going to see in the stands a lot? And TJ Hockenson was the guy we both said will probably be number one. We went Okudah, and you brought up Romeo Okwara. Those two guys on defense out for the year. Defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn's done a masterful job in kind of keeping the scoring down a little bit. That job's going to be a lot tougher the rest of the year. Are you looking at a team that's going to give up 30, 35 a week now?
I think so. I mean, maybe I should have just said Barry Sanders or Calvin, right? I mean, those are the standby answers that'll always be there. But no, you're right. I mean, look, defensively, it was a struggle to begin with because they were so young in the secondary. I mean, they had 3 rookies among their top 4 cornerbacks or 5 cornerbacks, I guess. And one of those guys is Bobby Price, has had some really pronounced struggles, and that's because he was playing safety 2 months ago, So I think it's to be expected, but now without Romeo Okwara, you lose your best defensive player, really, your best pass rusher. They cut Jamie Collins, who wasn't playing great, but at least was a veteran on that side of the ball. So, the defense is really... That's why Dan Campbell puts so much on the offense and demands so much of them, because the defense has so many holes that they have to help them along in different ways.
You're so plugged in across the league and talking conversations with agents and players and coaches across the league. Dan Campbell's first press conference with the biting the kneecaps, obviously there were laughs from people at all different levels, but it seems like there's respect kind of pouring in for what they're building and the respect that they do have here. What are you hearing from people across the league? Yeah,
I mean, look, I don't think anyone across the league expected this team to be very good this year, right? I mean, you look at where the Lions were in the roster, the youth, and how thin they were. No one expected a lot of wins, and especially these first few games, right? I mean, 49ers, Packers, Ravens, all playoff teams. Bears, a division team on the road. Vikings this week, a division team on the road. So it was going to be a rough start. So no one is down on where this organization is or where Dan Campbell is. But the one thing that people say is that this group of players plays hard. They play till the end. Part of the reason why they can't string 60 minutes together is because they're so young and so thin. And so as these guys grow, as the roster gets a little deeper, a little better, if they continue to play for Dan, and they do need some wins to really validate what he's doing. That's important. I think a lot of people are confident that this team will improve in time.
It is so weird because you evaluate what they have here, and by the time they actually do get the wins together and start making a playoff run, however many years away that is, you're looking at maybe a dozen guys that are here right now that will be with that group.
Well, and I mean, you think about it, even going back to the offseason, right? So many guys they signed were for one-year deals. I mean, basically every free agent but Jamal Williams signed a one-year deal. So the vast majority of this roster will not be here when they start competing, and that's why some of these injuries are a little concern to me. I know Dan said, that it wasn't as big a concern to him, what they lose developmentally, but the offensive line is going to be a big thing for this team going forward. Now there's no Frank Ragnow, no Taylor Decker, right? The Jeff Okudah you would think would be a big part of this in the future, out for the season. Who knows what his future holds? Romeo Okwara out for the season. He was going to be a big part for them. So the key players are not there, and I do think that's a loss for the Lions.
Last one for you. The quarterback is what everyone always talks about, and this year there's kind of just a sense of I guess he's just going to be the guy for a little bit here because everyone outside knows what the deal is with Jared Goff and his contract.
Yeah.
He didn't play awful against the Bears. The numbers weren't bad. What he does with the receiver group he has there, he's just not that big play guy that we saw early on in his career. Is that fair?
Well, look, I mean, I think, Jared is a vet, and he's better than some of the quarterbacks in the league, right? Like, you're not looking at the NFL's worst quarterback situation, right? He's a vet who can win you some games, can keep you in some games, but he also has 5 turnovers in 4 games. He's missed a lot of short throws where maybe he's not missing them, but he's putting the ball in the wrong spot. Yeah. And mistakes like that, the inaccuracies, the turnovers, those are things that this team can't have if they're going to win. And so I think when you're evaluating Jared Goff and when you're evaluating the Lions going forward, to me, quarterback is the biggest need because you either have one or you don't. And I don't know that Jared Goff is the guy that this team is going to build with going forward, going to win with going forward. Yeah. So at some point, I do think they're going to have to add a young guy in the draft next year, the year beyond. Now, look, give Jared a little bit of a leeway here because he's playing with no one at receiver, right, and everyone's new to him. So we'll see exactly what he is as this thing goes on. But I do think that quarterback is going to be a big need for this team in the draft.
I evaluate him with such an indifference because of the wide receiver group and also just because we know the status. We know that he's probably not going to be the guy going forward. But if this were a playoff team contending and the throw late in the game on 4th down is anybody else, we're probably coming at him with pitchforks.
Look, he's better than, again, a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, but if you really want to be that elite team, if you want to be that team that wins big, you got to have a Mahomes, a Kyler Murray, maybe a Matthew Stafford, right? I mean, you got to have somebody that you can really depend on, and I don't know if Jared's that guy.
Dave Burkett, Detroit Free Press Lions beat writer. Follow him on Twitter, online, and catch him everywhere, wherever you get your Sunday edition of the Detroit Free Press.